Bueno, pues buenos días de nuevo a todas y a todos.
Hello,
Continuamos
everyone. Once again,
los encuentros sobre las relaciones Unión Europea-CELAC
be most welcome
ante los
to this
desafíos
gathering of the
globales
EU and
y
CELAC,
comunes. Y vamos a pasar
facing
al segundo
common
tema
global
de discusión
challenges.
de esta jornada
And
en
we'll
base a
come
esas
to the
prioridades y
second session
a
of the
esa agenda
morning based on the
digamos, de producción
priorities
resultado de la cumbre
marked
Unión-Centroamérica
in the
Latina
agenda that was the result of the
Unión
summit
Europea en
um,
julio de
of
2023
Brussels back in June 23 in Brussels. And we will speak now about trade, digital transformation, and the investment agenda of the Global Gateway, which is one of the fundamental topics in order to work around this cooperation for this great challenge, the digital transformation, and to see how through our trade relationships we can reinforce our relationships in general, how we can reinforce our investment in order to better work together. We have four exceptional speakers. We will hear them in a hybrid way. Two of them will be in person here, and two of them couldn't be present, but really thank them for their time and interest to speak to us. We're going to hear first Christian GHYMERS, president of IRELAC, the Interdisciplinary Institute for the Relationships between the European Union, Latin America, Africa, and the Caribbean. He's also vice president of the Robert Triffin International Foundation of UCLouvain, and he's a well-known economist with a great experience and expertise in the analysis of the economy of the Latin American and Caribbean region. We actually have heard him before. Thank you very much for coming to Guadalupe from Belgium. Thank you very much to the Yuste Foundation for having me here, and thank you very much, Miguel, for inviting me, even though he knows that I will say things that are not nice to hear. But that's part of my profession. I'm a probabilist. So I will start with a very good idea of Miguel. The motto of this meeting is to create certitude, certainty. And as a probabilist, the only certainty that I have, according to the economic models that I work with, is that in 25 years from now, that is in 2050, effectively, we will get to net zero CO2 emissions, but not because of what people might think, but because, Miguel, you will have to switch off your light because there will be nobody left there. Our society, at least, will physically disappear, or we will be back to the Stone Age, no emissions, because the figures are horrible, and people are not offered, are not given those figures in order not to create desperate minds between the electorate, right? We will see them very quickly. I am not going to delve into the fact that we are on a systemic crisis that has several facets. I will focus around the fact that there is a climate change here and that it is irreversible. All of the other crises are reversible, but not the climate crisis. Even for the economy, it'd be enough for the central banks to inject some more, and we could get out of any financial crisis. But for the climate change, you cannot get out. And I'm going to give you a single figure. It'd be necessary from right now, from today, to increase the investment of clean energies of about 3% of the global GDP. That means for Latin America to multiply 5.5 times their current investments on clean energy. That's about 2 to 3% immediately more effort on it. And that's not worse. Africa is even worse, and Asia is even worse globally. So I'll let you measure the distance yourselves. So I'll just focus on the following. I will no longer speak about that because I have another certainty, but that's a belief. I think that a solution for me would be a true strategic alliance, not in words as we hear them for about 25 years. It would be to create a strategic alliance with Latin America and the Caribbean. So I'll say the following. Why do you think, what could we have a healthy outcome if we put together two gravely ill persons? Well, I am a believer in that, and I've believed that for several years now. I will try and explain this a little bit. The summits are 25 years old. We know that. Lot, loads of efforts, loads of interesting people, very many positive things, but the results for facing the current challenges is zero, is null. We haven't attacked the real problems. I have a shocking explanation for you. We are doing that because we continue to apply the diplomatic recipes from the 19th century. That's the top-down politics. What I've been proposing for my association for a number of years now, especially for bi-regional summits, is to revert the process. We have to do a bottom-up, starting from the experts, the national administrations from both regions must be in a permanent networking, and internet allows for that. And they must create trust, confidence, and proposals. They don't need to decide anything, but they need to do this work while being locked up so that they can speak without having fear of their own ministers. My half-century-long experience both in Europe, Africa, and Latin America is that we have the following problem. We partly work in a vertical scheme, probably in a vertical scheme, and we ask for the decision-making people, ministers, diplomats, etc., to take decisions on things they're not competent for. Experts are competent, but they cannot decide. So we must do two levels. The responsibility of the decisions must go to the chiefs of state, to the prime ministers, the ministers, but experts must have ample freedom. They must come to a consensus with their responses, and they should help, therefore, the ministers and the prime ministers, etc., to have all of the information. This is the method that we've been following for about 25 years. Einstein said it already. It's stupid to keep a method that has not given enough results. We have to change the method. So I propose the following method to substitute for it. I propose level number one, technician, experts, national administrations. You're competent in macroeconomy, another one in the environment, another one in health. So they are competent for that, those experts, and they must create a group dynamic, creating trust between the countries. The reports should go to the ministers, and they have the high function for deciding, and we shouldn't touch that, right? And we must add a public debate, and that must be done at the regional level for each region, and then in a joint way. So technical level first, Latin American, Caribbean, and Europe, and then consensus goes to decision making uh, people in both regions as well. I'll go back. Can I go back? Yes. There's another subject that I'd like to develop. Why could it work to join to sick people. As an economist, I realized that the illnesses of Latin America and Europe are not that different. The level is different, but we have the same viruses because we share the same values and the same methods, basically. So it would seem paradoxical, but I think we can. And I'll offer you the following arguments. If we change the method, as I just explained, if we create these group dynamics, we could increase, we could accelerate the degree of awareness and find out about the complementariness in terms of productivity and global value uh, chain. Go back to having a better international weight and go back to having a voice, multilaterally speaking, which we've lost today. Both in Europe and in Latin America, we are away from our potential, maximum potentiality. That's the red arrow that you see there, or rather a red line there. By using the complementarity between our both regions, we can come up to the green area. By associating Latin American SMEs with European ones and associating the universities or academia that can be associated or would be associated in that, we have a potential 4,000 experts who are free, willing to do that. No budget problem. It's a method. It's about the method, not the budget. These people can freely give their advice, and we can reach the potential that the US or China have. And the two essential mechanisms that I like to underline, but we need some more technical development that I can give you afterwards during the debate if you want. First, the services, if we speak on national accountability terms or national accounted terms, it's there that we need to hit both in Latin America and Europe. That's a big default. And the other default, the other mistake is in high technology. But we cannot be competitive in high technology if services, if logistics are lacking. Of course, Europe is working better than Latin America. That's why that if both sick persons cooperate, it costs close to nothing to improve the services in Latin America just by letting SMEs and universities cooperate, European ones, for example. That'd be good. You could distribute it through the Latin American networks. That's yet another fantastic tool, not to get a Nobel Prize, but in order to increase productivity. Latin America is dying, like Europe, because of lack of productivity. I've all graphics later on. I'll leave them for the debate if there are any questions, because I think that Miguel wants me to be quiet now, right? We cannot hear Miguel? No, I don't want you to be quiet, but yes, I do want to go on. Thank you very much for your presentation. Those who know you know that your interventions are disruptive. You speak about an alternative model in order to face those challenges that we currently have as regions. And I've no doubt that that will raise some questions from the participants later on. And I now see Ramón Jáuregui on the screen. Ramón is the president of the Euroamérica Foundation and a member of the European and Ibero-American Academy of Yuste. Thank you very much for being here, at least online. You know, you have a very full agenda, and it's good to at least have you online. Very happy to hear you. Floor is yours. I'm very happy, says Ramón, to be here. Miguel, thank you. Miguel, thank you to the Yuste Foundation for invited me to such an interesting seminar as this one. I regret not to be able to be there in person, but it's good to at least be online with you. So I like to stick to the three subjects: trade, digital transformation, and global investment scheme, Global Gateway, in order to respond to your interests around this table. I'll start by saying something that has been said already that I fully share. That's the importance of the Brussels summit of last year. We retook a relationship that had been dangerously interrupted for about 8 years, and that coincided with the Spanish presidency in the Council of the European Union and the presence of Mr. Borrell as the High Commissioner for relationships. So point number one is to reiterate the importance of that summit. Point number two is the business roundtable that took place some hours before that. I think it was in July 18th, 2023, where President Lula, Sanchez, and von der Leyen presented the Global Gateway agenda. I think that was one of the great achievements of that summit, and it's good to remind ourselves of that. And also the media presentation of 45 billion euros that the European Union put to the service of that agenda. Having said that, I'll go a little bit deeper into these two subjects to speak more systematically of the opportunities and the barriers that we might have for the development and implementation of that agenda. As for trade, Annika or Erica was speaking about that earlier on. We're very happy that all parliaments of the European Union have ratified this agreement for association of political trade agreement between the European Union and Central America. Point number two. Point number one. Point number two, the agreement with Chile. That was very good. We needed to update an agreement having been signed many years ago, but needed to adapt to a totally new economic reality. Offering also expectations for opportunities for collaboration that were very good. But there are two main problems: Mexico and Mercosur. I think we need to be adamant and sincere and acknowledge that we have a very grave problem if Mercosur is not approved. And we see on TV right now that there are protests, not just from French farmers. I saw it yesterday on TV that some Spanish farming sectors are protesting against Mercosur. If we make a whole fuss about side aspects of it that are not fundamental, that could be problematic, but, and if France decides to say no, Europe might lose a great chance to have an agreement with Latin America, because Mercosur is the black hole in the economic relationship between Latin America and Europe that we haven't solved yet. And then there's Mexico. Mexico has an agreement, but we have to update it as well, because Mexico is very important, and there are over 10,000 European businesses working and cooperating there. Thousands of weekly flights between Mexico City and the main European capitals. So this agreement is indispensable. So for the trade side, these are my comments. For the digital transformation, I'll say that a few years ago, I was with Ms. Vestager in Bogota when the Digital European Initiative was presented, and they haven't evolved that much. We believed and we continue to believe that Latin America, as a margin for economic cooperation in the digitalization and technological development. They're notable because there is a lot of talent and there is a huge margin of things to do there, of opportunities to have there.
Europe has the capacity to have a higher industrial and technological capacity or production, and has a good potential in the world of digitalization. And here I must emphasize elements that are right now hindering this development and this cooperation. And I want to emphasize number one, we have a plurality of technological companies, connectivity companies, and companies mm, eh, that work in the field of digitalization and artificial intelligence. They cannot compete with the Chinese company that is offering connectivity and artificial intelligence and technology, etc. So we can't compete with the technological platforms and the development that, well, Draghi already pointed out that we have a huge gap regarding American and Chinese businesses. So we have a big problem to help Latin America in this field. There are many important things to do. We have the Internet of Things, we have cybersecurity, the digitalization taken to industrial areas, SMEs, etc. There's room for improvement, but there are many opportunities. And what we are seeing in the last years is a large presence of China in the environment of connectivity. We have Huawei and we have, well, the main Chinese company that is there and the Chinese technological platforms. So there is room for improvement, but we are not competing in that field on equal footing. And lastly, global gateway investments. It's important to know that we have an agenda. I think this was one of the great successes of the uh, business room table in the summit because the agenda set 135 large projects that Latin America must undertake in the next years. So we were wise enough to say, well, this is the way. And we were wise enough to include the European business world in these development horizons in terms of technology, infrastructures, and, well, the economic development of Latin America in general. So that was point number two. We have an agenda. Point number two, Europe wants to be there. That's clear because the business summit went in that direction. And we have trade frameworks with most countries. And I must uh, mention Mercosur as an exception. This makes us export. Clearly, there are some arbitration frameworks for investment. But I must emphasize something that's not that good. What is not that good? The European business world does not know global gateway enough. I'm aware of that because I work on this cooperation of the European Union. I work with the business world, not only the Spanish business world that is more aware, or the German or the French business world, but in the rest of Europe, they're not familiar with this. And unfortunately, we are not attracting businesses from Europe in the tenders or investments that we're discussing. Problem number two, the diversity of companies. When a European company has to compete with, in terms of electrical mobility, for example, in Latin America, it's competing with another European companies. Chinese and American businesses only don't compete against other American or Chinese companies. So we have a problem there. Then another problem is the investment, particularly of China in the last 10 years, supported on the famous Silk Route, has a very strong uh, foundation. They have financial possibilities that Europe doesn't have, and we lose opportunities because we don't have that financial support. And unfortunately, we must say that European businesses complain that they're not seeing how the financial architecture of the global gateway articulates in terms of support, stimulus, specific financial support with multilateral banks to concentrate and create powerful bids to be awarded those tenders and be stronger in Latin America. I would say that those are the major problems. I wanted to limit myself to the 10 minutes that I had. And of course, I'm at your disposal should you have any questions. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ramon, for your intervention. And thanks for pinpointing those major problems that, as well as you mentioned, those things that have been done well and those positive agreements. You also pinpointed those major obstacles that we have, like, for example, the advance of Mercosur, the advance or the challenges that we have in the face of the Chinese and American um, potential, and the gateway, the problems that global gateway gets in terms of benefiting Europe. And you mentioned how banks can use this tool, and we have here with us Pablo Chiesa, who's a specialist in strategic alliances from the Inter-American Bank for Development in the European office. We just had him in another seminar that we organized, so we're going to give Pablo the floor so that he can tell us what the Inter-American Development Bank is doing. Thank you very much, Miguel. Good morning. I want to start by thanking the Yuste Foundation for organizing this event. I will organize my intervention around those three items that give that are the name of the panel: trade, digital transformation, and investment agenda. In Latin America and the Caribbean are over 250 million people that are digitally excluded, and there are huge inequalities in terms of accessibility, inequalities between generations and the city and the rural areas, of course. To give you an idea, in Latin America and the Caribbean, 86% of the Caribbean is covered by broadband, compared with 90% as is the average of the OECD. Regions need over $100 million a year to close this gap. I must remind that connectivity is basic for social and economic development and is basic for what Christian was mentioning, productivity. It is one of the great problems in the region. Trying to bridge this gap is basic for everyone to have access to the benefits of technology and to achieve social development in our region. There are three main challenges. I just mentioned one, a connectivity gap. The second one is the low levels of technology used by companies. And the third one is the lack of capacity by the public sector. Out of the 32 countries in Latin America and the Caribbean, just one, that is almost a third, that lack a digital transformation agenda. In the BIRDU group, we're trying to channel resources to offer the region some opportunities through specific projects to bridge this gap. We have 64 loans, operations to bridge this gap. And I want to give you an example. And I want to mention the global gateway topic and the alliance with Europe. But right now, I'm going to give an example. Paramos Conectado, it's a large digital transformation project for the state of Pará in Brazil. We are funding together with French cooperation. And this project is going to fund the extension of the underwater cable to make it possible to connect public centers, schools, etc. This is part of the Global Gateway initiative for the BIA cable that Anika was mentioning in her intervention. So I just wanted to give some examples or a specific example of how the Global Gateway agenda, together with a multilateral bank like us, can create alliances and give specific responses. But we, as a bank, are transforming ourselves with the support of the European partners to address these topics and others that are very important. And here I wanted to um, make a parenthesis. 2024 has been a very important year for us because we had the presidents of the multilateral bank that went hand in hand with the Brazilian presidents of the G20. So we were able to work very closely in terms of the international financial architecture. So our vision is to work as a multilateral bank, but also we want to make the multilateral banks more efficient to give better mm, responses to our citizens' demands. In March this year, we held the first retreat of multilateral banks, and this retreat of presidents of the multilateral banks was the origin of a joint document that was presented in the G20 summit for the creation of a more efficient multilateral banks network. We're funding instruments like hybrid capital systems and coverage systems in local currency to foster private investments. Internally, in our bank, we have started a triple transformation because we have a new strategy, a new institutional strategy. We have the recapitalization of BID Invest, which is our private investment strategy, and we have the BID Lab, which is our technology laboratory. Although these may announcements can seem not to be connected to this panel, it's the other way around because our efforts as a multilateral banks are focused on improving our impact and leveraging private investments for the development of Latin America and the Caribbean together with our European partners, for example. I think there's much potential. In spite of everything, Europe is still the first investor in the region, but we believe that there is um, still much potential to explore, and our European members, together with the Commission, the European Investment Bank, can serve as a platform to capitalize and channel all the investments. As I was saying, the BID is transforming to do this better. I'm going to speak faster. I wanted to mention that this year we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of the entrance of our European countries in the BID. So we had a large event in the Casa de America in Madrid in May, and that's when we launched an initiative for the European private sector that is called BID for the Americas, that focuses on three main axes that are tenders, uh, trade and investment, and financing. Our competitive advantage is all about fostering the private sector for development and maximizing synergies with our public investors. And obviously, all these efforts wouldn't be possible without involving partners from the public and private sectors. In this way, um, we have always trusted in the potential of our European partners. The Global Gateway is a great example of these efforts. I must remember that the BID is contributing through ongoing projects or pipeline projects that will start in 2025, $19 billion from its own capital in 297 projects that are aligned with the Global Gateway. I would just give an example, the cable for the connectivity of Pará, that's one of them. But we have done many innovative things, like, for example, a guarantee from the Swedish cooperation agency that helped us raise capital for projects in the Amazons. Another example is the cooperation with BEID, the investment banks, and we created an instrument of conversion of debt for nature. We held an operation in Ecuador, and we had another operation with BEID in Barbados. I also wanted to emphasize that relationship with the European Union doesn't limit itself to the global gateway. We cooperate on many fronts. I could mention, for example, the dialogue that we have on the topic of critical raw materials for a green transition and digital transition. So I must also say that we are mobilizing European resources. It's not just resources from the European Union, it's also resources from the different member states. Spain is one of the main contributors. And I want to wrap up. In the bid, we are transforming ourselves so that together with our European partners and thanks to initiatives like the Global Gateway, we can work together to face the challenges for European Union and Latin America. If challenges are global, solutions must be global too. In the bid, we always say that Latin America has resources to give solutions. We don't want to talk about the region as a receiver. Uh, Latin America and the Caribbean have the greater biodiversity in the world. There are many critical raw materials for green transformation, and Latin America is a net exporter of food. It contributes to food security in the world. So, if we join efforts, we may achieve a transformation that is beneficial not only for Latin America and the Caribbean, but also for Europe and for the whole world. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Pablo, for your presentation. And you showed us how the Inter-American Development Bank has many projects that have an impact on the region. I am going to pose two questions. Is the impact that was wished, and how is that impact measured in reality? You were talking about the potential solutions that Latin America can propose as a region that can be not just a receiver. Do you have any specific proposal that you have in mind? I will leave this question for the debate. During the previous presentations, we mentioned the Global Gateway, and we have Laurent here, who's an advisor for Latin America and the Caribbean from the General Directorate of International Associations of the European Union. It is a great honor to have you here, the Fundación Yuste. You are here and you're coming from another trip. So thanks so much for being here and for making yourself available. I'm going to give you the floor. I thank you for being here. And we are looking forward to hearing your approach about what's being doing in the Global Gateway. Some of the questions that you're going to address have already been mentioned. Thank you very much to the Foundation for inviting me here. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, the next 5 years will define Europe's position in the world for the next 5 decades. We will have to decide whether we build our own future or whether we let the events take over or others take over and decide for us. These are the words of Ursula von der Leyen when she presented the political guidelines of the European Union for 2024-2029. And I think these words set the right tone for the topic of our seminar. In order to address this challenge and the position of Europe in the world, a main element is the proposal to have a new industrial clean pact. This pact has the purpose of businesses achieve the goals of the European Union and for them to invest in our competitiveness to guarantee a sustainable access to energy and raw materials. In these minutes that I have, I would like to touch upon the foreign dimension of this challenge. We must be aware of risks in a world marked by this fight for technological advantage, the use of technological dependence as a weapon, and a softer boundary between economy and security. In the current world, geopolitics and geoeconomy are together. So foreign policy and economic policy in Europe must also be together. Then, therefore, the political guidelines of the Commission propose a new foreign economic policy based on different pillars. One, economic security. Two, trade. And three, investment. I want to share a few words on economic security. The principle of risk reduction without uncoupling from the large world blocks applies. This encompasses aspects such as the coordination of the exports coordination, management of risks arising from a foreign investment, internally and externally, and the economic security of key supply chains. Second point, trade. I must say that, as we have done in previous decades, the EU's foreign policy aims at closing connections with partners from everywhere in the world, offering reciprocity guarantees and equitable competence. And Ramón mentioned the relevance of association agreements, including trade agreements that we have with different parts of the world and Latin America. We must use the power that Europe has because of its critical mass. We have created an aggregate gas demand mechanism as a response to the crisis in the last years, and this mechanism can be expanded to include, for example, hydrogen and fundamental raw materials. In terms of trade policy, we will work on creating new trade and investment associations that are clean, known as their English acronym CITIPs, to increase our competitiveness and diversify our supply chains and strengthen our member states' economy. These CITIPs aim at guaranteeing European access to whatever we need to build diversified and resilient supply chains, particularly in terms of minerals and critical raw materials. Economic security and trade. The third one is obviously investment, the three pillar. We are going to continue advancing in the global gateway strategy in synergy with these CTIPs that I just mentioned. We're going to take the global gateway to a higher dimension, proposing our partners an integrated offer that includes investment in infrastructures, trade, and macroeconomic support. The global gateway strategy in the case of Latin America and the Caribbean translates, as it has been mentioned, into a common investment agenda referred to as GGIA that was adopted in the summit. Specifically, we're speaking about 137 projects that allow us to focus on a common agenda. This is a very valuable agenda. We have 16 months of experience in the implementation of the GHYA, and here I would like to emphasize 4 lessons learned in these 16 months. Number 1, the sustainable investment gap must be addressed in line with the common priorities of the European Union and Latin America and the Caribbean, mobilizing private and public capital. Public capital must be put at the needs of private needs. The strategic autonomy of Latin America and the Caribbean must be increased through industrialization and the higher added value, what was referred to back in the day, um, the separation from the first sector, and this should be done through closed technologies. Third, it is necessary to make investments translate into environmental, social, and governance rules that are high. And here I must emphasize the trusted vendors from the 5G or the um, railway traffic management system. To this end, a 360 degrees approach must be used to address not only regulations, but also technical training, research, the social dimension, etc. Fourth lesson learned. It is necessary to work in team, including the 27 member states with their development and cooperation agencies, the private sector, but also credit agencies for exports must be included, and the private sector must be also be invited on board through working groups. Ramón was mentioning the cooperation opportunities between our companies, and working in teams should focus on trying to organize relations to be more successful in these investment markets. To wrap up, the DGIA is over a little over 1 year old. We have made progress. It's in its implementation. We have made specific progress. Some of these projects will take years, however, but this shows how relevant the DGIA is for all member states. This DGIA, the Global Gateway, are totally in line with the new foreign economic policy of the European Union, and in the next years to come, the Global Gateway will be expanded and the DGIA will be expanded in Latin America together with our partners in the region, and particularly um, in the face of the next 2025 summit in Colombia. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much, Laurent. There is no doubt that at the end of your presentation, you made it clear that great progress has been made thanks to the Global Gateway, but you also announced that despite the progress, impacts take long to be seen, and the implementation of these policies take time. So this takes me back to the first presentation. It seems like we don't have that much time. If we consider that 2050 will be too late to solve problems, we have to think that we have to act faster. And Ramón Jauregui was mentioning that the Global Gateway may not be known enough by companies.
So I'd like to have an opinion on your part as to how to struggle against time, because we see that the powers are going faster than we are, and what to do in order to make GTIA more accessible to businesses, and elect rest of the participants to also ask doubts or questions what we've heard. Even so, it's in the middle of my. Yes, I'll join your question. I think that you were making reference to the fact to, to the fact that there were some protests by some sectors that don't consider that that they could get benefits from the agreement between the European Union and the Mercosur. I- That the side effects are not relevant to the um, whole agreement, right? Well, the thing is, businesses, the GTIA, they don't know about the agreement, so there is a lack of knowledge. What can we do? What do you suggest that we do so that that lack of understanding over? Okay, thank you very much. Maybe the speakers can react to that. Ramon, did you wish to say anything? You must unmute yourself. Yes, with pleasure. Yes. Thank you very much for the whole debate. Thank you, Laurent, because I think that you've given us a very good perspective on what the global gateway is. Because it appears that could go beyond what it is right now. But the culture behind the DGIA must have the complicity of the business world and of the governments of the states. And then there is some further commitments needed from the European governments in order to create a reaction on the business world of their respective countries regarding Latin America and the importance of Latin America in the economic development of Europe, and of the importance of the fact that that Europe must be present there. And I think that the embassies, the political representation that we have in all Latin American capitals, they must collaborate with the European business world in order to foster this framework. Because I think that our embassies are there for that, amongst other things. I think that our embassies are one of the greatest supports that we may have for the GGIA. When it was created, this differs from the Chinese strategies. They have a whole logistic plan for infrastructures, etc. And they do their investments function of the interest of the Chinese companies. And I think that a greater involvement of the European diplomatic services in Latin American capitals could help us a lot. The hope that I have is that we are able to take two fundamental steps. First of all is that the technical negotiations finish up this year. We need a technical agreement, a minimum. If there's a technical agreement, we later on would have a problem in Europe for the countries to accept it. And one condition is that France abstains and that the agreement is approved by a majority. Otherwise, it won't be approved. We will not ask Macron to sign this agreement, given his political frailty and the opposition of the farming sector. So they should accept the split of the agreement. They should agree the split of the trade part, and the council and the parliament approve it by a majority. That be a task for the political groups. The existing national resistances in France and in Austria should be resolved by a conciliatory resolution in order to enable the agreement to be approved by the majority. I think that be some ways of solution on a fundamental thing around which I think that Europe has a lot at stake. I think that the other speaker also wishes to talk now because he also focused on that. Could you please take the micro to, and if I could also upload my PowerPoint. I'd like to first answer Alberto about the global gateway, which is almost completely unknown. Yesterday, I read a report from the Bruegel think tank from Brussels saying that they have statistically verified what China is doing regarding other powers such as us, regarding their external initiative called the Belt Road Initiative. Our global gateway is qualitatively much better than what the Chinese are doing, but the statistical observation is that people don't know about this. There are some NGOs criticizing the global gateway, and they're not criticizing the Belt Road Initiative, despite the fact that what they're criticizing regarding the global gateway is 100 times worse when it comes to the Belt and Road Initiative. This is not just a marketing or communication problem. It's about the method. The method of the global gateway is not adequate to leverage the participation and the consensus of the population. Because first of all, there is little transparency. It doesn't involve the actors in the regions, despite they're trying to do it, but the method is wrong because they're not bottom up. First of all, you select the project in parity between Latin American and Caribbeans and Europeans. And then but they're doing it in an opposite way. So that's in order to answer to Alberto's question. Regarding Mercosur now, that's frankly despairing. I spent a part of my life doing international trade and explaining that it's totally stupid to try to protect a sector with barriers, with trade barriers. I'm going to give you with tariffs, right? Trump, during his first mandate, wanted to protect some of the white line manufacturers in his country. I think it was washing machines or something like that, in order to bother the Asian manufacturers. He imposed some huge tariffs. I think it was 30% on those tariffs, and that enabled to get $82 million in tariffs, but the cost for the North American consumer was $1 billion. $1 billion with a B. If we apply that to the French case, for the consumers, the French consumers, they do deserve to be protected. Actually, regarding high technology and the high industry, we must bear into account that we should be telling farmers that in priority they would receive some of the gains that the agreement would give us, even fiscally, because they should be compensated. But they should not prevent Latin America from exporting where they're more competitive than we are. Even a small child could understand that. Vulgar populism is typically French. I think Pablo wanted to react as well. I wanted to give a couple of examples about what you were saying. Let's go to concrete terms. One of the solutions that Latin America can have at a global level, and I think specifically speaking also regarding Europe in particular, is the critical raw materials. So critical raw materials for the green transition. And I think that an alliance between both regions is fundamental for two reasons. First and foremost, because Latin America is trying to primarize their economies, which may seem like a paradox, right? And Europe is a leader in sustainable mining services. And on the other side, Latin America is lacking an ecosystem in order to create local value from their raw materials. So if we create an alliance between Europe and Latin America, we could enable the expansion of the supply in raw materials globally, but specifically also for Europe, and enabling with new technologies, enabling to finally create some value added in the region, for example. And another example that I have in mind is biodiversity. And I think that we said that yesterday. It's an almost philosophical thing. What is the financial value that we give to biodiversity? So there's an operation that we are doing in Barbados, and that's actually about that. It's about a multilateral bank, the BDA, would put as collateral together with the sovereign debt of a country. That would imply that the cost of serving, they have a triple A qualification, and so the cost would be low, and that implies savings for the state. And the state of Barbados commits to multiply by 2 the protected marine area around their island. So this is a quite innovative way of augmenting the protection, of increasing the protection of biodiversity through a financial tool. Now, enabling at the same time the debt reduction of the country. in this case, a middle income country or development country, or developing country, sorry. Thank you, Pablo. Maybe Laurent wishes to react. Maybe Laurent, you could, we could hear the audience now, and then we can hear you. Monica, and then thank you very much, Miguel. There is a common roundtable regarding the opportunities of green transition. Well, maybe to link with that, I totally agree with the strategic possibility for collaboration between the European Union and Latin America and the Caribbean. And in order to stir up the debate, Christian, I don't totally agree with the pessimism. I think that not only conceptually, but also materially, we've made great progress, and we don't need to wait to 2050. I think that in a couple of years' time, we can do something. I'll refer to that later. And I think that we have a very important strategic alliance. And there's a lot to be said there, but I'll go into that deeper there later on. We'll be attentive to what you have to say later on, and I think a colleague from Colombia also wished to. Yes, I have 2 comments regarding what's been said. First, regarding the difficulties that were found on the Colombian part regarding the GHYMERS, there's been a lack of information, not on the mechanism as such, but on what our European partners would like us to present. We presented only 3 projects to that framework. One of them has been forced into the GHYMERS, that's the metro of Bogota, it's a strategic project for a 10 million inhabitant city, lacking a metro. We were doing it anyway, but you haven't participated in the bid. Also, the offshore wind project in the Caribbean, which is the most important in Latin America right now. And we've also felt that Spanish business people also don't know about the possibilities of the GHYMERS. So the negotiation has been quite complex. We've tried to create those canals, those channels from the embassy, but we need to have more clarity regarding the possibilities because we don't know the range of the tool beyond being yet another instrument for financing. So what's your strategic goal? Because when they're the competitors, when they're the Chinese partners, they know where they're heading or where they're pointing at, right? So, and then regarding the bid for the debt exchange for climate action, President Petro spoke about that recently at the COP and also in New York. We were exploring the possibility of a bilateral debt exchange offered by Germany within the framework of the COP. And we were exploring it with other European countries, but the alarms went off because there was the risk qualification if we participated on that type of investment. So it's not just necessary to speak about the instrument. We've had the experience in Galapagos and Barbados, but we also need not for those alarms not to be set off for the rest of the debt that we still have. I think that the ambassador from Honduras also wished to speak, and then the director of the institute. Please. Hello, everyone. Along the line same line of thought of my colleague Santiago from Colombia and some of the comments. I'd like to share with you what we are undergoing in Central America. There is the Global Gateway investment agenda, but there's also the Global Partnership for Central America announced by the US and the government of President Biden, and the new Silk Route of China. But I'll focus more on the Global Gateway, right? You said there's not that much interest from European businesses to participate in big projects. Be it the list of the 135 projects or new ones. In Honduras, 100,000 new megawatts are going to be bid for, and also new offers for repaving our route network and building new hospitals. But very few European businesses are participating there. That's been bid through the the CAF, the World Bank, and some some development banks. We need to know about the guarantees better. The projects of the US have no banking guarantees. The Chinese one neither. So I think that takes away the worries of the European investors regarding some investment rings, they would assume. Then that's key for the European investors. They should know about the guarantees that the Global Gateway have through the development banks. Thank you very much. Don't know if it's along the same line, but we've heard about some of the we've heard some data about the investment that needs to be made for the digital transition. We've also spoken about the productivity problem that we have. If we add those things up, and also in line with the competition from the New Silk Road and the North America proposals, well, maybe we should accompany with some monetary policies our economic policies, right? I don't know whether they are working together or not, because money is actually moves the world, right? Floor goes now to Laurent, who's been intently listening to us, because there's a lot of focus on the GTIA tool. Please, 7 minutes. Yes, thank you very much for your comments and your interest. I will start by saying that there is an urgency for this. We need time, but we don't have time. This GGIA is about a year and a half old. The new investments would take many years to be implemented. But investments are a great wheel, and they don't stop. They go round and round, and we're actually implemented investments approved before 2023. The Bay, for example, the cable, and sanitation, transport, etc. So European investment continues to be strong in Latin America, as we've said before. But for the GTIA, we need to accelerate the rhythm. We need to accelerate or increase our competitiveness by organizing us better. Our competitors are American, North American, and Chinese investors. They do that. From the European Commission, we are carrying out a very intense agenda. We have GTIA overview meetings twice a year, the business advisory group, business missions and business forums on the continent several times a year. So we've organized several thematic encounters with the European businesses for critical raw materials, railways, green hydrogen, electricity, power. So we are pushing the European teams to European team to get better organized. How could we do so the businesses know the global gateway better? Well, a fundamental thing is the country teams. We're working in Team Europe, but we also need Team France, Team Netherlands, Team Spain, etc., to get organized and do the articulation and dissemination work for the tools. We have to thank Spain for the work that they've been doing in organizing Team Spain. And with my director, Felix Fernandez Sort, we're traveling to the European capitals. Next week we'll be in Rome in order to accompany the organization of those country teams, each under their own model, but those are fundamental pieces of the puzzle. Then there is the interest of the private sector on Latin America and Caribbean investment. Obviously, Spanish businesses know well and understand well that region, but that's not the case for businesses in other country members. There's a lack of knowledge. There is a lack of industrial base as well for the mining sector. A colleague from the BID mentioned it. Europe is lacking that mining industrial base. There's also an aversion to risk. The lithium triangle is between Bolivia, Chile, and Argentina. If the European businesses have an aversion to risk that doesn't enable them to invest there, well, then there's a problem. Businesses having an interest in investing in Latin America and the Caribbean, they do know the GGIA. And that's thanks to the diplomatic mission network that somebody mentioned as well. In countries of Latin America, the embassies of Spain, France, and other places, they work together. The trade counselors, the political and the cooperation counselors work together in order to make sure that any European business interested in investing in the country, that they know where to go and they know about their options. One of the challenges that we have is how to create some greater interest from the European businesses, that there is more participation in biddings and tenders. I think that we have to improve our competitiveness in order to improve our chances as European businesses. It's necessary for these businesses to know about these opportunities of the global gateway so that they can have a paved way for participating in those tenders and biddings. Thank you very much, Laurent, because you actually answered all questions. There's maybe one last observation on the part of Christian, because we're almost lacking out of time. Thank you very much.
in half a minute, we don't have the time to explain everything that is involved in this. So we have a situation, and based on the dollar, it's impossible to decarbonize. And we have the monetary dimension. The situation is more complicated than what it may seem. The US is having an important role in decarbonization. Thank you very much, everyone. And something very positive about what has been saying in the different presentations is the different challenges that we have. And the different challenges have been identified, the challenges that we need to face. That's the objective of this meeting. We will take all of this to Brussels so that it can reach all the different places where these messages needs to be. Thanks so much for the presentations, and thanks for the very interesting questions that have been made.